When the fuck did I put this on my iPhone? Hey guys, so it's been a while, in the words of Stained and Critical Role. It's been a while. I did that kind of all the wrong way around. Sure. Life's been a bit, yeah. So who knows what bullshit this video is going to turn into. It's going to turn into an amalgamation of everything, but basically had a few weeks of not so good mental health, and then a few weeks of, oh shit, loads of stuff's happening. I have been loving life working in the bookshop, Book Bag in Exeter. It is just so nice to be working with books again and remembering the bits of working with books that I love, and it's just super fun, and I'm loving it. So things have been going really well in the bookshop, and we had a really cool event the other week, our first sort of live event since all the COVID shenanigans, with an awesome local author called Ellen Wiles, who's written this really interesting book about live literature performance, and that was emceed by Mike Wozniak off of Taskmaster, and I was a little ad hoc roadie, and he said I can put on my CV that I was a roadie for a Mike Wozniak event, so tick! Life goals that I didn't even know I had until it happened. A couple of weeks back, I also got to do a really cool takeover on Exeter City of Literature's Instagram. So Exeter is one of 39 UNESCO cities of literature. Aha, don't you know? Don't know what that noise was. Let's just pretend that didn't happen. And when the director came into the bookshop looking for a book on Reykjavik, because she was going there for a conference, she inadvertently opened a can of worms, because you guys know how much I love particularly like my Norse shit, but also anything from like Scotland and up. That's where I feel at home, even though I've only ever been as far as Edinburgh. Anyway, so I sent her this email with a load of Icelandic books, and she said, would you like to do a takeover to kind of share some of this shit? So yeah, that's what I did for a week, a couple of weeks ago. It was really good fun. I'll link down below to Exeter City of Literature's Instagram and stuff, and also a link tree with all of the links for all the research that I did for that week and all the stuff that I shared. And I had a whale of a time. And it also explains why I have got my massive big stack of Icelandic books, which I've pulled out from various places on my shelves, and now I'm realising they need their own shelf, don't they really? Yeah, I'm missing one. I don't know where it's gone. I'm gonna drop these. That was a really fun week. It was really nice chatting to people about Icelandic literature, and I've had some really nice comments from some people coming into the bookshop since saying thank you for doing it, and they've got some recommendations. And I also got to chat to Larissa Kaiser, who is an American translator of Icelandic fiction and poetry into English, and got to talk to her about the imposter poets called Svíkaskald, who are a group of Icelandic women poets who all get together and just kind of give themselves free rein to write poetry and whatever comes out. And Larissa Kaiser and Meg Matic are translating, or have translated, a pamphlet of Svíkaskald's poetry into English for the first time, and I'm gonna get a copy of that, and I'm very excited. Again, I will link that down below, because that's just really cool shit. I'm gonna do like the shittiest snapshots of these books that you ever did see. Well, I say that, but then the first one I'm going to pick up, I feel like I could happily talk about that for hours, So my last video was my TBR for Simon Savage's summer book, Hibernation, and I read a few of them, not as many as I thought, but the book that I was, I think, reading at the time that I did that video and then finished, finally, was Ellie Williams' The Liar's Dictionary. Now, you guys may all remember how much I loved At Rib and Other Stories, which is Ellie Williams' collection of short stories. It was probably one of my all-time favourite books, now I think about it. I kind of was in a bit of a slump when I started it, so I struggled to get into it, but once I did, I flippin' love this book. The two separate narrative strands are just somehow like they give me the warm and fuzzies, but also explore like language and meaning and connection, and just it's just awesome. I wasn't expecting like twists and turns in a book like this, but they happened, and that was fun. So I highly recommend The Liar's Dictionary. Whether you read At Rib and Other Stories or not, this is just a good novel. It's really funny. The playfulness with language, again, because I was in my reading slump when I started it, I was like, have I got the brain space for this? But yes I did once I got into it, so give it a chance, give it a shot. It's brilliant. Then, for summer book Hibernation, I can't even remember which prompt this was for, I don't know. Love in Colour by Babalola. This book is a collection of short stories, sort of retellings of myths, legends, stories from the past that are primarily sort of myths and legends that we, in the kind of white canon, don't really hear anymore. There are retellings of stories from like Nigerian history, Egyptian history, all sorts of things. And it was really good, but the problem was my cynic heart. Sitting and reading non-stop, like 10 short stories all about love and all about how great love is and shit like that. I was like, yeah, alright, do one. So really beautiful writing, really lovely stories. Some of my favourites were the 1001 Nights inspired I can never say it. Scheherazade? Not even close. I think my favourite was probably Nefertiti because queer. But it was just my cynic heart sitting and reading non-stop a collection of stories about love. I think it's the kind of thing, if you dip in and out of it, lovely summer's day, nice little uplifting story about love, probably much better. Then I read, again, can't remember what prompt, something about swimming, Stubborn Archivist by Yara Rodriguez Fowler. This was another bloody brilliant book that I've had on my shelves for flipping ages, always meant to get around to it, and I'm so glad I finally did. I was going to say it's a story of a young woman figuring out who she is, but that sounds so like trite. Basically, the way this is written, the style of the writing, it's kind of little vignettes interspersed with more narrative stuff. It's just got a really cool structure. It's slightly kind of weirdy structure on the page, which is what you guys know I love. And the writing is just absolutely beautiful, but it deals with this kind of conflict in the self and from external forces of sort of when you've got parents from different countries and who are you and where do you belong, and going back and forth from those two countries and where do you feel more at home. And it was just absolutely beautiful. So I strongly encourage you to pick up a copy of this and read it with your eyes or your ears. Audible's a thing. Next up, I read Fish Soup by Margarita Garcia Rabbia. Now, this is a book set in, I want to say Colombia, because I think that was the prompt, I believe. So it's got a load of short stories in there and then a kind of novelette as well. Now, the writing in this was really quite brutal, is the word that kind of comes to mind. It was quite cruel in places, but that kind of fit what it was trying to do. So I wouldn't necessarily say it was one that I enjoyed, but it was a book that I think I got something out of, and the writing, the voices in there were really interesting and compelling and kind of can't look away, want to hear more. So very excited to read more from Margarita Garcia Rabbia, and this is published by Charco Press, who always put the translators on the cover. Then also one of the prompts, I started Great Gatsby. I just don't think it's for me. Like, it is one that I will probably give a chance another day, but I think once I'd read some really, really good books that I'd really got my teeth into that kind of seemed to almost be fixing my little reading slump that I was going through, I started reading it and I was like, nah, I don't care. Then I read Assembly by Natasha Brown. Now, this is a short, sharp novelette about a young British black woman who has a fairly upper middle, probably upper class white boyfriend, and just sort of dealing with being a young black woman in Britain and all that entails, and particularly with having this really kind of posh boyfriend's family and all those conflicts and perceptions. It did in this short little book what I have read other books trying to do in much greater page numbers. There were some words in there that was almost a sentence, go me. There were some narrative threads of it that I felt weren't quite as fully woven in, and I kind of wondered where they went, but they did lend a kind of fullness and a realness to it. And actually, threads in life often get frayed and blow in the wind. So really, really good book. All the hype you've heard is real. Then I read on Kindle Sarah Moss's The Fell. So this is upcoming from Sarah Moss. When is this one coming out? Let me check. 11th of November, that one's coming out. Now, you guys know how much I love Sarah Moss, and ow! And having recently read, wow, what was the other one? I love her so much I can remember all her books. Summer Water, that's what it was called. Good lord, that took a while. So big thanks to Pam Mac for sending me a digital arc of The Fell. I'd been wary of reading any kind of lockdown novels, and we know we're going to get them, but this was typically Sarah Moss, beautiful, yum yum yum. She deals with the inevitable interiority of lockdown in such a beautiful way, the kind of seesawing of thought processes and how you can go from, when you're living with someone or not living with someone, that kind of irrational, I love you, I hate you, that we all kind of probably went through while if we were living with people with lockdown, and if we weren't living with people with lockdown, you get what I mean. You've got a young boy at home whose mum goes out for a walk and she falls, which is not the fell in question, she falls on the fell. I see. I'm dealing with him trying to navigate this position while being scared about her having, broken a lockdown quarantine and rules and gone out, and then talking with his neighbour, and her dealing with having this young boy next door who was sat there on his own while his mum is who knows where. And it was just absolutely beautiful, set over only a couple of hours. I just love Sarah Moss. Then I read also on Kindle Transcendent Kingdom by Yard Yassin. It was absolutely beautiful. The fucking drill, man. It's an absolutely beautiful book dealing with a woman figuring out her relationship to God and science. She is a scientist doing stuff with rats and brains, and her family history with addiction and her family's relationship with God, her own relationship with God. I will say, I saw a comment somebody else said, and it very much rang true for me, that was basically saying if it's the kind of novel that if I was someone with a closer relationship to either God or science, it would be a lot more impactful, sort of exploring that dichotomy between the two, the relationship between the two, can you reconcile, can you not reconcile, and all of this, if I had a strong relationship. And there were parts of it that I kept at a distance, perhaps because of my own Anyway, but it was absolutely beautifully written, and it has made me very excited to finally pull my finger out of the proverbial arse and get on and read Homegoing. Then I also read, during this indeterminate time frame, part pleasure, part business, the book of Reykjavik. Now this is published by Comma Press. Comma Press do a great Comma Press do a great selection of reading the city books that are all short stories based in a particular city and written by authors from that city or from that country. And the book of Reykjavik was the book that kind of opened the can of worms. This was the book that the director of Exeter City Lit came in for a copy of, and I took it home and was reading it as well. And as with any anthology where there are so many different voices, there are some that are much stronger than others, some that feel a little weaker, but my absolute favourite is The Gardeners, and I just cannot stop thinking about it, even weeks later, because I started this quite a while ago and then put it down while I was doing the takeover stuff and then picked it up again. And The Gardeners I read pre-doing all of that, and it has just stuck with me. These brothers who end up moving to Reykjavik and starting this gardening business, and then they kind of do a house swap with this old English literature professor, and it's just beautiful. So although some stronger, some weaker, I do thoroughly recommend. Then off the back of my research into Icelandic authors, I discovered Mazen Maruf, who is a Palestinian Icelandic author, and this is his collection of short stories that was longlisted for the then Man Booker International back in some year. Well, that research really stuck in the mind, didn't it? But anyway, this is a collection of stories. I'm intrigued as to whether this was written pre or post him moving to Reykjavik, but it is an incredibly interesting collection of short stories. Again, quite brutal, quite dark, quite bodily, functiony focused on some of them, which is, yeah, so if you're not a huge fan of like body horror type stuff, it's not too bad, but maybe like at arm's length. But yeah, again, that kind of brutality in the writing was incredibly fitting for much of the stories, and it was just a really rip-roaring ride that I just sat and spent an evening and read and thoroughly enjoyed. Also recommend. Then I also read the Little Penguin modern classic Fernando Pessoa's I Have More Souls Than One. You guys know I love Fernando Pessoa's The Book of Disquiet. Why is my brain not working? There it is, Book of Disquiet. This is some of the poetry that Fernando Pessoa wrote over his life. He had lots of kind of different pseudonyms and wrote poetry under lots of different names, and this is a kind of collection of some of the poems from some of those names. Not my favourite Pessoa. I have, like, there are some, you can't see, but there are some passages that I have highlighted that were lines that were kind of like, oh, that was really nice. But I think unless you're into a lot more of the kind of almost like pastoral, kind of old romantic type poets, which I'm just not anymore, it wasn't really my bag. Then another one that I've recently finished that I read on Kindle is No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood. This one is shortlisted for the Booker Prize. Is it won? Has anything won? Nothing's won. Nothing's won. It's shortlisted for the Booker Prize. It's kind of an internet novel, you've probably all heard of it. I read it and started really enjoying it, and then I thought, how long is this internet thing gonna take before it gets old? And the answer was not that long, and I'd heard that halfway through it kind of switches tactic and doesn't become, it becomes less of just like an internet novel, and I was kind of waiting for that to happen, and I'll be honest with you, I was just about to kind of give up on it, and it switched, and I was like, okay, right, now let's see what you got. So it is very much two different books that do have this common thread of kind of the pervasiveness of the internet and internet culture and how addicted we all are to the portal. And it was very interesting, very cleverly done, very funny in places. As I say at the beginning, the internetness was quite funny. I have ate all the plums in the blah blah blah. But I'm still not 100% sure on it because the novels felt so different that I wasn't quite sure what they were doing. The second half was very moving. There was one particular line in the novel that really did hit me like a ton of bricks, and that was about after someone dies, basically trying to preserve their scent, and that was very, I did just kind of read that and just have to take a little minute staring off into the distance. But still, overall, not entirely sure about the novel. Be interesting to see what happens with the booker. Then finally, last night I had a little date night with myself. I sat and ate a charcuterie and read a book and managed to not fall asleep. I sat and finished The Hierarchies by Ros Anderson. This is one that I've heard loads of people talking about, and then one of my colleagues, Sarisha, in Bookbag had read it and said how amazing it was, so I got a copy, sat and started reading it the other evening, sat down by the river, finished it last night. It's a wild ride. It's about sort of artificial intelligence and also how we use people for sex, and these artificial intelligence kind of very highly sophisticated robots are basically used as like sex dolls, well they're called dolls, and it's all very dark and very weird, and the main character Sylvie, the AI, then kind of escapes and then falls into another kind of captivity and then discovers, it's all about sort of what it means to be human and gender roles and where we ascribe those, and I just found it really very interesting, dealing with what it means to be human, discovering how to be human, connections, where we forge, where the line is between humanity and artificial intelligence, that whole kind of thing. I've not really read many artificial intelligence based novels, I don't think. I've read a few. The ones that mainly spring to mind are the Becky Chambers ones, so they've got an AI character in that. But Sylvie, I kind of really fell for, and her kind of naivety and strength at the same time, and discovering all about herself and humanity, and I just found it very, very touching, very moving, also very, very, very icky in lots of places, and just very like, oh, yeah, this is a bit too real, but it's not, and that's what's worrying. Again, another one where the hype is real. Oh, I've switched sides. No, I haven't. All those books are on the floor, and I'm regretting it. I never do that, and it's making me itchy. So I'm gonna have to go and just... Okay, so as I suspected, there is no way I'm fitting in the hall as well. That's just not happening, Liv. Be realistic. Can you by any chance tell that I have been consistently drinking coffee since 8 o'clock and it's now 4 o'clock? So, sorry about the absence if anyone cared. Sorry about the mile a minute. I wouldn't recommend watching this at 1.5 speed because chances are I will... So, I'm gonna go and have a not coffee, and then I'm going to film the haul because why not? When in Rome. As I mentioned, I will pop in the description down below all the links to all the Icelandic stuff that I was doing, and check that out if you fancy. No press. No press. Who says no press? No one. If you're ever in Exeter and you fancy coming down to McCoy's Arcade to visit the bookshop, book a bag, then please do. That'd be nice. Support your local bookshops. So, thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in a couple of days when I upload... fluff. What will probably be similarly frantic energy haul for the indeterminate period. Happy days. I hope you're well. Live long and prosper and all that. Bye!